On today's podcast, I had four-time Emmy winner Chris Van Vliet, and we talked about how he has interviewed the biggest celebrities in the world, like The Rock, like Oprah, Anne Hathaway, Tom Cruise, you name it, he has interviewed them. And we talk about what his journey was like going from a small school in Canada to coming to the States and becoming a Hollywood reporter, a Hollywood TV host, and now having his own podcast, which is just absolutely amazing. So we go over what it's like to become a podcaster, how you become a TV host, and where the future of media is going. So make sure you guys stay to the end. Now, let's jump into it. Are you looking to grow your real estate investing business? My company, Future Flipper, can help. We've taught hundreds of people all over the country how to flip, wholesale, and buy rental properties. And it doesn't matter where you're at in your investing journey. Whether you're trying to get your first deal or scale your company, Future Flipper can help. We have courses, coaching, and events for all levels of investors. So if you want to take the next step, go to futureflipper.com and book a free consultation to see how we can best help you. Once again, that's futureflipper.com. If you've ever wanted to invest with me on my real estate deals, it's now possible. At Pineda Capital, we're purchasing value-add real estate all across the country. This includes multifamily, commercial, and land development. The best part is, with my network, social media presence, and marketing strategies, we're able to get the very best deals that others don't have access to. You can join in with me on those deals if you're an accredited investor. If you want to learn more, head over to pinedacapital.com to see our current opportunities. Once again, that's pinedacapital.com. Welcome to the Ryan Pineda Show, where our mission is to invest.
I only expect to make money in things that I understand.
Innovate.
It's about believing in the future and thinking that the future will be better than the past.
And inspire. I am much more likely to hit my goal just due to putting it out there.
You now rocking with the best.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Ryan Pineda Show. Today, I've got a very unique guest. I was recently on his show, and I had a lot of fun. I had to invite him to my show because I had so much fun with him. I've got none other than four-time Emmy-winning TV host, Chris Van Vliet. What's up, man?
Dude, what a setup you've got in here. This is awesome.
It's a good setup, but I'll say, we did your show at The Win, and how much did that studio cost?
I think, so that's the Blue Wire Studios there, so it's the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Certainly not coming out of my pocket.
Yeah.
But I think they said it's like $6 million.
$6 million for this podcast studio.
Yeah.
And I walked in it, and I was like, man, I thought I had a good studio, but I think I have like one of the best, normal person studios, but man, that's like what a top-notch thing looks like.
It's unbelievable. And by the way, you are not a normal person.
Yeah.
You took me for a tour around here with everything you have going on. You are not a normal person.
Well, I appreciate that, dude.
I appreciate you being humble, though.
Well, I got to say, you're not very much of a normal person either because, dude, you've interviewed people like The Rock how many times?
9 times. Not that I'm, counting or anything.
So you've interviewed The Rock 9 times. You've interviewed Denzel Washington. Who are some other guys?
Tom Cruise was a great one. Will Smith, Anne Hathaway, Meryl Streep, like literally, you name it. And I've been so fortunate to be able to spend some time with them, mostly throughout my career as an entertainment reporter or as a TV host.
Yeah. So tell me this, you were a 4-time Emmy winner. How do you win the Emmy as a TV host? Because pretend like I'm dumb. I don't, because I see people winning these awards as actors and stuff. I'm oh, okay, there's the movie. But how would you win it as a TV host?
So the Emmys are broken up. They've got the daytime Emmys, they've got the regional Emmys. So basically, when you're working for a TV station, you've got anything you put on TV is eligible to become an Emmy. You're eligible to win an Emmy. So I won for hosting, and I also won for a news story when I was living in Cleveland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
So I did a sports story, and I love wrestling. We all have our things that we love, right? And I'm very passionate about wrestling. I wanted to be a wrestler when I was growing up.
Okay.
Went to wrestling school for a few months, and I was so fortunate to get to meet this guy in Cleveland named Gregory Iron. And he's the only wrestler in the world who wrestles despite having cerebral palsy.
Wow.
So I dug in deep with his story, followed him around, interviewed his family. It was a really touching story. And I was honored to be nominated for an Emmy, and that was when I won my first Emmy for telling that story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just amazing journalism and...
Yeah, it was just a really cool story of not unlike your story or my story of you had a goal, You believed in yourself and you knew you could get there.
Yeah. Is that on YouTube or anything?
It is. You can look it up. It's called An Iron Will.
An Iron Will.
The Gregory Iron story.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out after
Yeah, check
this.
it out on my page.
Yeah. So tell me this, you've interviewed all these people. Like, how did you even get into it? You said you want to be a wrestler, and then all of a sudden you find yourself, I guess, kind of doing it by interviewing The Rock. But how did you get into TV?
If we go way back, I wanted to be like you. I wanted to be a baseball player.
Oh, even better.
So
what happened?
I started playing T-ball at 4 years old and found myself like I was one of the better players on the team and was always like playing rep or select or travel baseball. But I grew up in Canada. The odds of
There's
you
not a
being-
lot of Canadians. Yeah. It's too cold. You can't practice
That's
the way
thing.
we do.
Your season is like May to September. That's
Yeah.
it. The rest is indoors. So the odds of becoming a pro baseball player, not that great in
Right.
Canada. But I always had a real passion for broadcasting. When I was 4 years old, I had a Fisher-Price tape recorder with like the cassette tapes, and I would pretend to be the radio announcers that I heard on the radio. I'd pretend to be Tom Cheek and Jerry Howarth, who are the Toronto Blue Jay announcers, and I was pretending to be a radio DJ and a radio announcer. And that's when my love for broadcasting began. And then I went into high school and they had a communication studies class. And I was taking communication studies because we got to do TV. We had like a TV studio within our high school. I ran for vice president of my student council in high school because that was the guy who got to do the morning announcements. And all I wanted to do was present. I loved that energy of being able to be in front of people and present and feel their energy and put that message out. So that's kind of where it began. I ended up going to college for communication studies. But when I was in college, kind of realized that like I was going to have to find my own path here. And I had a huge epiphany in college. Like one day I woke up in my senior year, hit me like a ton of bricks because I was having the best time in college, living with 4 of my best friends. It hit me like a ton of bricks that when we graduated this year, I was going to have to go to work for, the rest of your life.
Right.
And I decided in that exact moment that I didn't want to hate what I was going to do for a living. So I reached out to every radio station, every TV station in my college town and just said, I'm passionate about broadcasting. Can I come in and volunteer and see how it's done in the real world? And one radio station got back to me and they said, come be part of our street team. And I was handing out like stickers at different events. A TV station that was run by volunteers, like a community station, said, come on in, volunteer. Like, we'd love to have you. And then another radio station said, we don't take on volunteers, but how would you like a job? I said, I'll take it. They said, it only pays $8 an hour. I said, that's $8 more than I thought I was going to make.
Was this in Canada or was
This is in Canada. This
Okay.
is in Kitchener, Ontario, which was my college town, Kitchener-Waterloo. And that's kind of where the whole journey began of me going, I don't want to hate what I do for a living because there's so many people, man, that can't appreciate Sunday because Monday's the next day.
Right. They're
And
already dreading it.
Oh my God, I never wanted to be one of those people because you're literally working half the time you're awake for the rest of your life.
Right.
So that was where my path began of going, I don't want to hate what I do.
Yeah. So with that being said, you reached out to these radio stations while you were in college, right? Before
Yep.
you graduated?
Yeah.
And was it just to get a feel for the industry? Like, man, once, I graduate, is this something I really want to do?
It was really that like I knew I wanted to do it and I always looked up to the people who were on the radio or on TV. I knew I wanted to do it,
Yeah.
but I knew what I was doing in class wasn't really preparing me for that.
Right.
Yeah, we learned a lot of theories and read a lot of textbooks, but I wanted to be on a set.
Yeah.
Not unlike this. I wanted to be on a set, like in the real world.
You know what's interesting that I'm thinking about is, we talk about college, right? And I got an economics degree, and I know that there are a lot of great people who've gone through college, and they're really well. But I think every person who goes to college will tell you that, man, it does not really prepare you for the real world the way it's actually done, And same thing with me. But as you were speaking, I was like, man, you speak so well, and the way you project your voice, the way you speak, like you don't have errors. You don't have filler words like I do. I am not a trained speaker. I've just figured it out as I've gone along and made content. I never had a desire to, be on the TV and, and do the morning broadcast and be the vice president so I could do that. Like that was never a thing.
Yeah.
I just was like, I want to play baseball. That's it.
Sure.
But now that I've done it, I'm just like, dude, my style is what it is.
Yeah.
But then I can tell like you are very well trained professionally to speak. You've got that radio delivery. You've got it all. Like, how did that happen?
I think it just happens over time. I think that you just start to, and we all do this, where you mimic the people that you look up to, whether you're doing it intentionally or not.
Yeah.
There's been a real shift, though. They don't want people on YouTube that are sounding too polished because they don't sound real. Like it sounds inauthentic. So the style you're talking about, where you're just kind of like, this is who I am, and I'm going to put it out there to the world, that's what's working now. And that's why the people on TikTok that are just normal people doing selfie videos are the ones who are blowing up now.
Right.
But it's not like I didn't sit in a class and someone said, like, this is how you need to speak.
Well, and that's what I was wondering was in college, going for communications and broadcasting, did they teach you, hey, because I remember I took one communication class and I think I got like a C because I was scared to public speak. I was scared to, I would give a speech and I would say, all the time. And if you guys go back to my podcast, you'll see I've got a lot of filler words that aren't good in terms of.
But the fact that you can be aware of that is huge.
Yeah, I know I shouldn't do it, but when I listen to you speak, I'm like, this guy speaks perfectly.
I remember I went to an acting class, and it was my first day in the acting class. I'm like shaking everyone's hand, like, "Oh, I'm Chris. Nice to meet you." The acting coach goes, "All right, Chris, in front of everybody," and I'm like, "What? Right now? In front of everybody? Tell us about yourself without saying where you went to school. You've got 60 seconds. Oh, and do it without saying or ah, go." And everybody's first reaction is, my name's Chris Van Vliet. And like, boom, you're immediately out.
You're out.
So he lets you go. And then after it, the teacher comes up and joins you and goes, "How many was that?" And you're sitting there going, what's he even talking about? 7? Was it 8? No, 8. Okay, it was 8. You said 8 times in 60 seconds.
Yep.
We need to work on that. And I'm not saying I don't say or ah now, but ever since that acting class,
you became aware of it.
I became so aware of it.
Yeah.
Because it's used as such a filler word, especially in radio, where you can just go and on to the next thing.
Yeah, because you have this dead space and you want to fill it.
Yeah, exactly.
When I do YouTube, I get to have the pleasure of having my editors cut all my mistakes out. And so everything looks polished. They're like, "Dude, how'd you become such a polished speaker?" And I'm like, well.
There's the
yeah. And I'm like, it's really just my team. They're editing everything out. But the podcast, we don't really edit anything. So you can really see how I naturally speak.
This new style of editing where it's like cut is what they call in the industry a jump cut.
Yep.
And you were not supposed to do that. That was taboo.
Yeah.
And when that started becoming a thing 5-ish years ago, it was like a really big hurdle for me to cross over and go, "Oh man, jump cuts are okay now? This goes against everything I believe in my soul."
Yeah. It's funny. One of my investors at Pineda Capital, he's a very big TV personality, national. And I won't say who he is, but he was like, "Man, if they saw your YouTube videos, they would just think they are so bad. And like, what were they doing?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "But I get it. Like, I watch TikTok. TikTok takes the jump cut to the extreme.
Absolutely.
Everything's a jump cut." And for me, I'm creating media and I'm like, this is just what people like these days, but you look at the old school media and they think it's just terrible. And they're very slow to adapt to like what's current now.
Yeah, and I think the problem is there's a lot of TV stations that are still making television like it's 2002, and we're almost in 2022 now.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to kind of just be keeping up with what's going on right now.
Right. So, you go to school, you get this job for $8 an hour. What happens next?
So I was a board operator for $8 an hour. So I was the guy running the soundboard for a news talk radio station.
You're like my guy over here.
Just like that, except the soundboard was a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
After every shift,
He's making more than $8 though.
Congrats. After every shift, I would go into the recording studio and I would read the scripts into the mic so I would have a demo reel for myself. Even though I wasn't on air, I was faking it that I was on air, so I had a demo reel that I could present to other places. I knew I needed an internship to really get my foot in the door, and nobody was getting back to me. I reached out to every radio station and every TV station in the province of Ontario, and no one got back to me. And then I thought, well, I've got to do something here then. So I had spring break coming up. I scoured the internet and found the email address for the general manager of this small station called Chex TV, 60 miles from my hometown, so an hour drive from my hometown. And I reached out to him and I said, "I'm going to be in Peterborough next week for spring break. I'd love to come by and talk to you about a possible internship." Total lie. I had no plans of going there. Hadn't been to this city in like 10 years. But he said, well, if you're going to be in town, we don't usually do this, but sure, come on by. He looked at my resume of all the stuff I had built up with that volunteer experience. And he went, you know what? We'll take a chance on you. 2 weeks into my internship, I get handed a piece of paper from the assignment editor. And he goes, here's your story for the day. I said, well, who am I going out with? And up to that point, I had been following around a reporter. And at a small station, you're writing, editing, reporting, doing it all.
Right.
He goes, well, you're going out with Terry, but this is your story. You're going to be on the news tonight. So 2 weeks into my internship, I'm 21 years old, and now I'm on TV. And my internship from that point on was me reporting on stories. A few months later, they ended up giving me a job. But I was working my old high school job in the pet store of the fish department of the pet store. So I could pay for the gas to drive an hour each way to this internship.
Wow.
So that's really where it began, of me going, there's no opportunity here. I got to go create an opportunity.
Right.
And hopefully this kind of figures itself out.
Well, you know what I love about that story is you were willing to put yourself out there and go just seek opportunities everywhere. You know, the way we met was you DM me and you were just like, hey, you know, like, let's talk. And then boom, we've been on each other's shows. I gave you a connection to a guy who I think is going to really help you out. And it's only because and it's only because you put yourself out there, right? Like, you're already a big guy. Like, you don't have to keep putting yourself out there. You know, you're at the point where a lot of people contact you, right? But you're still constantly doing it, trying to go get the next story, get the next person, relationship.
Well, the biggest thing is if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Yeah.
And I think that people are scared to ask because the answer might be no. I'm excited to ask because the answer might be no. Because every no that you get, and you've heard this, gets you that much closer to your next yes. But I think this idea of me being a reporter for so many years of my life, me being a TV host for so many years of my life, I like live my life under like a deadline. Because every single day at 6 o'clock, you've got to be live on TV, whether you're ready or not.
Yeah.
And now I live every day like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you too, man. When I was playing sports, you know, I don't even know how many professional games I played, but, you know, you play at 7 and we play every single day. You know, baseball is the only sport where you play every day. And we would get 2 days off a month. And it was like, dude, if you don't feel good for a week or you're injured, it's either you play through it and you show up at 7 o'clock that night, or you know, you go on the DL and somebody might take your job and you're done.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. When you're playing, you were in the Oakland A's
organization,
right? How did you know you weren't going to make it to the show? Because you're seeing some of your friends and guys you play with, they're moving up.
Yep.
How did you know it wasn't going to happen for you?
I think for me, I always had the belief I was going to make it until my last season in Oakland, which was 2012. I remember vividly, right? Like, I was a late round draft pick, so I didn't get the opportunities that the early round guys got. But I remember one of the first round picks went down, so he got hurt. And so it opened up a spot for me to get full playing time.
Yeah.
And I remember I played like 40 games straight for the first time, and I was leading the team in average. And I was like, this is great. Like, I'm making moves. This is going to set me up for next year. I'll be in AA. It's going to be great. Well, you know, the guy comes back. He gets healthy, which, you know, whatever, cool. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to keep playing every day. Like, I'm leading the team. And all of a sudden, like, I just go back to not playing every day, playing every other day. And at that point, I started to get discouraged because I was like, man, like, what do I got to do?
Yeah.
And so I think at that point was like the first time in my life where I really had doubt, because I was just like grinding and always saying, dude, if I just got an opportunity, I know what I can do. And I got it. I proved it a little bit, but it still wasn't enough. And so after that, the following spring training, I got released by the Oakland A's. They were like, hey, we got no more room for you. And I was like, wow, I didn't even expect that. I thought maybe it'd be another year of, you know,
of A-ball,
not playing, maybe, you know, sparingly playing, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they released me, and that was at that point where, you know, I was just like, all right, my career's done. And I ended up playing in independent baseball for 5 years after that. But I think that was my point where I was like, man, like,
Yeah.
What do I got to do?
Well, I mean, life is all about those moments.
Right.
Life's all about those fork in the road moments.
Yep.
Where you go left, and had you gone right, maybe things will be different. Or you're forced to go left.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah, and I think that's what led me to business personally was because, baseball didn't work out the way I thought. And I was only making $1,200. And so it was like, if I want to pursue my dream playing baseball, I have to go get a side hustle and I have to go figure out how to make money. And sure enough, that became what I became really good at.
Yeah.
Far better at than baseball. And I was like, I didn't know this was a skill.
Yeah.
Much in the way I didn't know that I could be having a podcast or do YouTube. I didn't know these were skills until I was forced into these positions.
Yeah. And a lot of that's just the skill stacking that you've done. You're pretty good at this and you're pretty good at this and you're pretty good at this. Put that all together. Now you're really good at something.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. So one of the last times I talked to The Rock, he was promoting Ballers. So in Ballers, he plays a retired NFL player, which is ironic because The Rock's dream in life was to play in the NFL.
Yep.
The Rock did not accomplish that dream. It's crazy to think of The Rock as a failure, but The Rock didn't even make it in the CFL.
Yep.
So I asked The Rock, I said, if you could go back and change anything, obviously things worked out pretty well for The Rock, but if you could go back and change anything to achieve the goal that you had to play in the NFL, would you change anything? And he told me something that I'll never forget. He said that sometimes the best things in life are the things that don't happen. And it's those things in life where you think that it has to be this way. You think you have to be married by a certain age or a father or a mother by a certain age, or you have to have this job or buy this house by a certain age. And sometimes when those things don't happen, they point you in a direction that's actually better for you.
Yeah. And I can tell you for me, that totally happened.
Yeah.
I look at my life ever since I retired from baseball. 2017 was my last season. And my life exploded.
Yeah.
It was just like I started to take business more serious. I learned I had these other skills that were kind of dormant. I didn't have time to pursue them or try and hone them. And I will say, and probably The Rock would say the same thing, is by going through that failure and those hard times, it made the next phase so much easier.
Yeah.
Dude, when I look back, people are like, are you scared that you got all these things going on and these responsibilities? What if the market crashes? What if this? And I'm like, dude, I was playing baseball for $1,200 a month every single day with completely out of my control. If I got to play that day or not, it was out of my control. And I had to go to the field knowing I don't know how it's going to go. It's out of my control. We'll see. Whereas here, every day in business, I'm in control. I'm like, I can make strategic moves to kind of influence what my future is going to look like.
Yeah. And then now you're the one in the driver's seat.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of people that are scared. They're scared of if I take this chance, that means I'm leaving all of this behind. And they're not seeing what's beyond this little, maybe it's a hill.
Yeah.
They're not seeing that if they just go over this hill, everything they want is waiting for them there.
Have you ever wanted to invest in real estate, but you didn't have the time to find deals yourself? That's where Fundrise comes in. Fundrise is a crowdfunding platform that has transacted over $5 billion in real estate and has over 150,000 active investors. While many funds, like my own, require accredited investors, Fundrise allows anyone to invest with as little as $500. If you'd like to learn more, check out fundrise.com. Once again, that's fundrise.com. Are you looking to find off-market real estate deals? One of the best tools my team uses is Batch Leads. With Batch Leads, you're able to pull data, manage lists, and send text messages. On top of that, you can get nationwide access to the MLS to get pictures and comps. My team has used Batch Leads to get some of our best deals, so I know it works. If you want to start today, you can get half off your first month by going to batchleads.io and using the promo code Ryan. Once again, that's batchleads.io, promo code Ryan for half off your first month. Now, back to the show. Yeah, dude, the one thing I want to say with all my content, the podcast, everything else, man, people just need to take a chance.
Yeah.
There's there's so little to lose compared to what in our mind we think we can lose.
Oh my gosh. The question I get asked the most is, how do you start a podcast or how do you start a YouTube channel? And I'm like, you just start. That's it.
Yeah.
You really just start. What are you waiting for?
Yeah.
And it's crazy that there's people like, well, yeah, but I need a good name for this show. And then I'll need the right software and I'll probably need the right mics. What kind of mics do you use? And it's like, no. Do you have an iPhone or a phone? Okay, great. Hit record and go. And that's really it.
Yeah.
And I think that people psych themselves up and use all of this stuff as excuses to not start.
Yeah.
And the first thing and the most important thing you need to do is just start. Just take that first step and you'll figure out the rest from there.
Yeah, and one thing I'll say about that too is you will figure out what your message is and your style and what you want your channel or show to be about as you go on. Like, I'm almost 100 episodes into this. This is my first year podcasting, and I've enjoyed it. I love it. The first episodes are very different than the episodes today. And in fact, this might be one of the last episodes I use under the Ryan Pineda Show name. I'm thinking about changing the name. And it's not like I knew this name when I first started, like that this would be the path I wanted to take it. But as time went on, as my message became more clear, as I started to understand who I wanted my guests to be, I'm like, they all kind of fit this criteria of like what I'm trying to preach.
You gonna give us a hint of what the new name is?
I can't give a hint live, but I'll tell you off camera.
This is so funny because I just changed the name of my show about a year ago.
Okay. What was it?
It was the Chris Van Vliet Show.
Yep.
Which is a great name if you know who Chris Van Vliet is or you know what Chris Van Vliet's about.
Yep.
Or if you know who Ryan Pineda is and you know what he's about. And I thought to myself, the show has never been about me.
Yep.
It's always been about shining a light on my guests and like stealing their insights and reverse engineering their path so I can selfishly apply it to my life.
Exactly.
And then everybody who's listening can go, oh, I'll take a little nugget here and a little nugget there. So we changed the name in January of this year, so almost a full year ago, to Insight with Chris Van Vliet.
Yep.
So now if you're a guest on the show and you repost it on Instagram, thank you for sharing our episode, your audience can go, oh, Insight with Chris Van Vliet. I don't know who that guy is, but I know what Insight is. This show must be giving us some sort of insight.
Yeah.
So we changed the name of the show, and I'm so happy that we did.
Yeah.
Mostly because it's not about me. So my name being in the marquee there didn't make sense to me.
And, you know, by having this conversation, I think you just gave me confirmation that I'm going to do it.
Good.
Because I was like, 75, 80% like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But, we'll see. But
and I looked at the shows that I listened to, and like the Joe Rogan Experience aside, all of the shows that I listened to were The School of Greatness with Lewis Howes.
Yep.
Impact Theory with Tom Bilyeu.
Yep.
On Purpose with Jay Shetty. And I was like, there's clearly something here. Like Tony Robbins always says, success leaves clues. It's like don't try to figure this out on your own. Other people have figured this out.
Yeah.
Just like follow their path and learn from their mistakes.
Exactly. And for people who are still going to be searching, Ryan Pineda or whatever, they're going to find it.
Yeah. If you type in the Chris Van Vliet Show, it still comes up.
Yeah. So, yeah. You gave me confirmation. So
okay, good.
It's going to happen.
Do it, man.
I'm going to do it.
You'll be happy you did.
Yeah. So tell me this, you start getting some recognition, you start doing stories, you're working full time as a reporter. How does that transition into Hollywood?
So I was working as a reporter in this small station.
Yeah, how do you go from Canada to Hollywood?
So I ended up auditioning for MTV2 in Canada. MTV2 Canada, they were based in Vancouver. Again, kind of lied my way into the audition. This is a theme. You'll see this. I saw the posting online and saw the name of the woman who was doing the hiring. She was the executive producer of the show. Sent my stuff in, never heard back. And I was like, you know what? I really think I could get this job. So I randomly called the TV station and asked for her by name. And they were like, one moment, please. And I went, oh my God, this is going to work? She didn't pick up the phone, but I left a voicemail and said, hey, just wanted to let you know I submitted my stuff. I'd love, any sort of feedback you could give me. She wrote me back a few hours later in an email. And in her email signature was her direct phone number. And I went, oh, you will be getting a call from me soon. 2 days went by. I called her directly at her desk. She picked up and I went, oh, hi, it's Chris Van Vliet. I sent you my stuff. I wanted to let you know I'm going to be in Vancouver next Thursday. Vancouver's a 5-hour flight from Toronto.
Yeah.
I'm going to be in Vancouver next Thursday. Would love to come by and talk to you about the job. And again, she goes, well, if you're going to be in town, sure, come on by. And that was how I ended up getting the job. Like by being there, right place, right time, and showing them that I was willing to do it.
Well, I think, and for one, it's not a lie. You know, you were like, hey, I'm going to be there, you know, and either way, I'm going to make it happen.
I wasn't going to be there unless they
Yeah.
had something for me.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that was
even if they said no, though, you might have still been there.
I
wouldn't put it past you to like
maybe.
just go door knock them and like,
yeah.
hey, you
That
know,
was where things really changed. My first day of work there. Remember the rapper Chingy?
yep,
Right there.
right there.
My first day of work was following him around.
Oh wow,
Yeah, so I spent an entire day with him as he was doing promotion for his new album.
dang,
So I went from reporting on stories in a small town, like you can only imagine what those stories are,
yeah,
to following Chingy around, and then
like really quick, like it changed quick.
like the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I packed up my 1995 Toyota Corolla, drove 47 hours from Toronto to Vancouver, and the next day was following Chingy around.
Wow.
Yeah. So it went from Chingy to a bunch of musicians, comedians, actors, some wrestlers. And that's really when I started interviewing just celebrities in general. And also realized that like they are normal people, just like me and you, but they have an insane amount of drive to them. Every single person that's in that position is in that position because they are the best at this.
Yeah. No doubt about it. I mean, it's just like baseball in the minor leagues. Like you got to rise from doing crappy auditions and all this stuff, not making any money. Like, do any celebrities just go straight to the top? Like, it's just, you got to work your way up.
I think there's the odd example of someone who's just like has the right look for that job.
Yeah.
But oftentimes it never ends up leading to anything.
Yeah.
Like I think McLovin's a really good example. But other than that, like, what's his name? Chris Platz. Other
Yeah.
than that, I don't know if there's too many examples of someone who were just like in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
So it was Toronto to Vancouver, and then I went to Cleveland. That was my first job in the US.
Okay.
I was an entertainment reporter in Cleveland. And my first week in Cleveland, I was reporting from the Oscars. So like it was incredible. It was incredible, dude. I was at the Oscars my first week there. And that's when I really started talking to like some of the really big stars. And yeah, it's just been really cool kind of figuring out like how did they get to where they're at? And also, it makes you a great listener because when you're an interviewer, if you want to have a great interview, you have to listen. You have to listen to what the person's saying rather than going, okay, I have this next question in my head. This is what I'm going to ask you next. No matter what you say, I'm going to ask this next. Because when you're doing those interviews with people that are doing 40, 50, 60 interviews a day, you don't want to get the same answer out of them that they've said to all these other people that day. So I started finding interesting ways to approach questions or interesting topics. Kind of another baseball metaphor here. You just swing for the fences.
Yeah.
I would swing for the fences and ask these big, sometimes ridiculous questions. And if it didn't go well, that's okay. We would never show it on TV. The only people that would know are the people in the room. That was it. If it did go well, you'd have an amazing moment. Like I asked Harrison Ford, have you seen Indiana Jones 4?
No.
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Spoiler alert for everybody. You can stop now if you don't want to hear this. At the end of the movie, the crystal skulls are aliens.
Okay.
It's ridiculous.
I remember that movie was like hated on a lot, wasn't it?
Mostly because of that. Like
Yeah.
it was like
They're like aliens and Indiana Jones. Doesn't
right.
make
It was
any
just
sense.
so strange.
Yeah.
So I interviewed Harrison Ford, and this is on my YouTube channel. I interviewed Harrison Ford for a different movie called Extraordinary Measures. And I said, Harrison, do you think you'd ever do an Indiana Jones 5? And Harrison Ford speaks like so lowly. He's like, well, it took us this long to do this movie. I'd love to do it. It's just a matter of time. I said, well, Harrison, if you do another one, can you promise me there won't be aliens? He looks around the room. And the room's filled with like security and publicists and makeup artists and camera guys and audio guys. Looks around the room. And I'm like, oh, no, I'm never going to do another interview again. And he leans in and I'm like, oh, no. And he goes, just between you and me, I think I can. And I went, oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Harrison. That moment could have gone terrible.
Yeah.
And it ended up being like a fun moment that we showed on TV and ended up going viral on YouTube. So I just like started to realize, swing for the fences.
Yeah.
I had another moment with Anne Hathaway where the first photos of her as Catwoman had just come out in The Dark Knight Rises.
Yeah, great movie.
Great movie. I love Christopher Nolan. I didn't prepare my question as well as I probably should have. I wanted to ask her about her workout routine. for like how she got into shape to be Catwoman.
Yeah.
So the way I phrased the question was, I said, oh, the first photos just came out. I don't know how you fit in that suit. And she's like, oh, you know, I do lots of bench kicks. And she's making up all these like terminologies. I said, you look amazing. How much weight did you lose to get into the shape that you're in right now? And she goes, how much weight did I lose? What a forward young man you are. I said, I'm not saying you needed to lose weight. She's like, how much weight did I lose? And this blew up. It's still like, someone reposted this on TikTok and got like millions of views. And they're like, oh, I can't believe this. I can't believe he asked this woman about her weight. I'm like, no, I was asking an actor about their workout routine and phrased the question
Not
very poorly. Very poorly.
Dude, that is so funny. But yeah, you know, when you swing for the fences, sometimes you strike out.
That's the thing. This might have just been like I don't know, this is like a bloop single, I feel like. I don't know if it was a complete strikeout.
Yeah, you know, you got views. You know, at the end of the day, what do they say? All press is good press.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that has like, I don't know, 7 million views on YouTube.
There you go.
Pretty good.
So with all of these actors and actresses, you know, you went into it prepared. You're like, hey, I'm interviewing The Rock today. Yeah, I've interviewed this guy, you know, 5 times already.
Sure.
What am I going to ask him this time?
Yeah.
Like, were you approaching it that way? How did you think of these questions that you were going to ask all these people?
The thing about someone like The Rock is he's so giving. Like The Rock is very aware of his status. They always say you shouldn't meet your heroes. If your hero happens to be Dwayne Johnson, do whatever you can to meet your hero. Because he's kind and he's funny and he's compassionate, but he has this self-awareness that he knows that when you're meeting him, he's like one of the biggest stars in the world. So he wants to make it like an enjoyable moment for you.
Yeah.
So with someone like him, you don't have to try that hard because he's so giving. But what I try to do is, number one, I always try to approach an interview of like, what would I want to know? Like if I knew nothing about this person or nothing about this film, what would I want to know? And then I kind of break it down from there of like, okay, if everybody's asked that question, either A, how can I ask it in a different way that's interesting and can maybe elicit a slightly different response? Or B, let's just throw that out completely and ask something else. Like when I asked Harrison Ford about the aliens. So I think it's just, it's do as much research as you can going into it. And not just about the movie you're talking to them about or the book that they're promoting. Know about their life. So if they start to talk about something way over here in left field, man, so many baseball references during this.
Yeah, right.
You can go, oh, I know exactly what they're talking about, and I can go with the conversation this way.
So you kind of like to let the conversation just kind of flow wherever it goes.
Oh, I think the biggest problem that people have when they're starting a podcast or they're doing any sort of interview is they start to use the word interview. And that word terrifies them because it's interview with a capital I.
Yeah.
And the only time you really have interviews in your day-to-day life are job interviews, which most people are terrified for. And the other kind of interviews like, I don't know, going into like a police station and being interviewed.
Yeah.
These are just conversations,
Yeah.
right? So if you and I bumped into each other at a party tonight, I wouldn't go, okay, I'm going to say this. And then when I'm done saying this and Ryan's going to say this, then I'm going to say this next thing. And then hopefully Ryan will say that. No, you would just listen and be in the conversation and be present.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And dude, when I interviewed Tom Cruise, he is the most present person I've ever met, celebrity or otherwise.
How so?
So I was in Paris. It's the world premiere for the last Mission Impossible movie.
I love all the Mission Impossible.
So good.
I could watch Tom Cruise could be 70 years old.
And he will be.
And I'll still watch him go steal something.
Dude, that guy looks incredible.
Yeah.
So we're in the shadow of the Eiffel Tower on the red carpet, world premiere in Paris. And there's thousands of screaming fans, hundreds of other interviewers and reporters vying for his attention. And he's talking to me like I'm the only person in the room. It's insane. And I was just like, what an incredible quality to be in that moment, listening, actively listening, and like aware of the space that you're holding. It was just such an unbelievable thing to see.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think as I've thought about myself as an interviewer, that's why I was asking you, like, how do you prepare? You know, are you getting these questions? Do you have an agenda? Because the way I've always done these, and I've never even used the word interview until you brought it up. Now I'm saying it. But the way I've always done my podcast is people come in just like you did. We talk for a little bit, and I'm like, all right, let's roll, baby.
I love it.
Like, there's no notes. There's no agenda. It's just like, let's just dive into your story and what you're doing and kind of see where it goes.
Since you were on my show 2 weeks ago, I think that's a perfect example. So I listened to a few of your podcast episodes. I listened to a few interviews where you were interviewed. I'd obviously been following you for a while on YouTube and Instagram. So I started just kind of like jotting down notes in my iPhone. And then if something came to mind, I would jot something else down. In fact, I might have some notes here. Might have some notes from our interview.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, we probably talked about all of these things.
Yeah, we probably naturally talked about many of them without you having to bring them up or anything.
I asked you about your best flip ever. Is now a good time to buy a house? Who inspires you? Delegating. That was actually a really big one for me.
Yeah.
That I took a lot of value out of that.
I already gave you a guy to delegate to.
Thank you so much. I will take all the people to delegate. Yeah. It's baseball. Yeah, we talked about almost all these topics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think as an interviewer, what would you say, or not an interviewer, but somebody who wants to get into podcast or YouTube? Like on YouTube, I have to prepare, right? I script it out and I'm like, okay, here's what I'm going to hit on today's video. On the podcast, it's very freestyle.
Yeah.
I enjoy that much more because it takes no prep.
Yeah.
But what would you say for somebody who's getting started, like we were talking about before, who wants to get into podcasting or YouTube? Like, what are the biggest things that you can think of that'll help them?
I think it's important to find out what you want to do.
Right.
So what's your niche going to be? That's a really important thing. It's also important to ask yourself why you're doing it. Because if you don't know why you're doing it, it's really hard to convert on what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think it's important to go in and go, okay, I'm doing this as a hobby. Great. That is a completely different set of responsibilities than I'm doing this for my job.
Yeah.
So I think you should go in and find your niche. Find somebody in your space who's absolutely crushing it and figure out the steps that they took to get there. So maybe they're at step 63 and you're only at step 2. That's okay. Instead of being scared by step 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way up, figure out what step 62, 61, 68, all the way down are, and reverse engineer your way back to where you're at right now. And I think that's the best way that you'll have success.
Yeah, it's like we just talked about with the podcast name. Like all these other guys have figured it out. Why am I trying to reinvent the wheel?
And that's the thing. Like, don't know that you're not the first person to ever do this, and you're certainly not the last person to ever do this. Don't try to, like you said, reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand, like you said, is it going to be a hobby or is it going to be a career?
Yeah.
And I don't think either is wrong. It's
not
like,
at all.
For us, it's become a career.
Yep.
Making content is part of what we do. But I was actually talking to my wife the other day, and we were thinking about starting a family channel. And, with that, in my first initial thought, I'm like, okay, well, we got to treat it like all of these where it's like, hey, every day, or not every day, but every whatever, we have a schedule.
Yep.
We need to post a video
Yep.
at this time, this day, the deadline, as you said. And then I started to think about it. I'm like, man, I don't think I want to do that because, I don't want to put my wife and my family under that pressure. Like, we got to put out a video this week or whatever. It's really just for us. It's not for anybody else. It's more to just document and have these family videos as we grow.
Yeah.
And so I started to think about it. I'm like, I think this one is to be a hobby. I don't care if anyone subscribes. I don't care how the views are like I would with this.
Yeah. I think a lot of people go into podcasting, and Joe Rogan is the guy when it comes to podcasting. I think we can all agree about that. Everyone goes into podcasting going, oh, I'm going to be the next Joe Rogan. Well, I'm sorry, you're actually not. Joe Rogan is this anomaly. But I think another thing that people don't realize is Joe Rogan's at episode 1600 and change right now. Nobody was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience at episode 117, let alone 317.
Right.
But he stuck with it because he loved it. He was passionate about it, and he started to make some money with it. But I think there's a lot of people that get into it, and they're only 7 episodes in.
Yeah.
They start to look at the numbers and go, well, nobody's listening.
I'm out.
I'm out.
Yeah.
I'd say give yourself at least a year.
Well, and you know what's funny is like this podcast gets so many less views than my TikTok or my YouTube and whatever. But I love it.
Yeah.
I love interviewing people and just meeting them and having them come to the office and building relationships because for me, I just really like doing it.
And the other great thing about this is is there another situation in our lives when you just sit with one other person, not looking at your phone, and just talk?
Yep.
Like it forces you to have like an open communication with someone.
An old school conversation.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Because even if you and I went to dinner, decent chance that you might pull out your phone and like send a text to your wife or your girlfriend or something.
Yeah.
But here, it would be so incredibly rude to be in the middle of a podcast. Oh, sorry, man. This TikTok's just blowing up over here.
Check this out.
That's one of the things I love about podcasting.
Yeah.
Is it forces you into this.
Yeah. So speaking of Joe Rogan, he started on a very similar path to you in that he was doing, TV host, he's doing all these things, and then he gets into podcasting.
Yeah.
So what did it look like for you after interviewing all these celebs and working for MTV and doing all, winning the Emmys? Why kind of transition away from that?
So it started with YouTube, and it was the old model of television was unless you were watching Channel 19 on a Wednesday at exactly 4:17 p.m., you would never see the interview that I did with Denzel Washington or whomever it might be.
Then TiVo changed it a little bit.
A little bit, but still you'd have to go in and go, I want to actively record this show and then go back and make sure I watch it. And I was doing these big interviews with people who I thought I was having these great conversations with, and they would show up on TV for 2 minutes and then never to be seen again.
Yeah.
And I went, that kind of sucks. So I started taking these interviews and just uploading them to my YouTube channel just as kind of a digital library.
And MTV and these guys didn't care?
It wasn't really a thing. YouTube wasn't really a thing at that time.
They didn't know that it was like...
It was no different.
It wasn't competition.
No. It was no different than putting it on your Facebook page or something like that.
Right.
So I was just taking these interviews, taking the raw, uncut interviews, putting them on my YouTube channel and not thinking anything of it.
Yeah.
And I did one with the wrestler The Miz in 2011. And right before we really got into the meat and potatoes of the interview, he said something about how he was concussed at the last WrestleMania and doesn't even remember retaining the WWE Championship. And I went, oh, that's cool. Put the interview online, didn't think anything of it. People picked up on that interview somehow. And it went on all these message boards and all these different Reddit threads. And I woke up the next day and my video had 6,000 views. Yeah. And for me, that was insane.
A ton. Yeah.
Then I woke up the day after that and I had 36,000 views. And I was like, this is crazy. And I'm like, I think we're onto something here. Anytime I interview an interesting person, I'll just throw it on my YouTube channel.
And this was back in 2011.
2011.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I wasn't being intentional about it at all. It was just when I had an interview with a big star. And not long after that was the Twilight movies. I got some big interviews there with Kristen Stewart and Taylor Lautner and Robert Pattinson. Hunger Games not long after that. So I was just like, all right, I interviewed Jennifer Lawrence for Hunger Games. It's probably going to be pretty big.
Yeah.
I throw it on my YouTube channel and woke up a few days later and there was 1 million views on it.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was just like, I think I'm just onto something here. I wasn't trying to make that my career. I was just like, it'd be cool if more people could see this.
Yeah, because they don't see it on TV.
Yeah. And then in 2018, I was like, well, what if I were to go out of my way and drive a little bit to someone who's giving me access? So I was living in Florida at the time. I was in Miami, and Chris Jericho had just signed with AEW, this new wrestling company, and he hadn't done any interviews about it. And I knew him through a mutual friend, and he said, yeah, I mean, I'm doing a live podcast episode, because Jericho is a podcast, in Ocala, Florida. If you want to come up here, we can do an interview. It's a 5-hour drive.
Knowing your personality, I already know what you were going to do. You're like, oh, I'm already there. Like I was going to be there Wednesday anyway.
So I drove up 5 hours for a 20-minute interview in the back seat of his car. As soon as the interview was done, shook his hand, gave him a hug, got back into my car, and my buddy who drove up with me was editing the interview on the drive. We stopped at a service station on the way back so we could plug in the laptop, which was dying. As soon as we got to my house, uploaded it to YouTube, and it got like 1 million views.
Wow.
So I started being intentional about creating content, and that's really when things started to shift.
Yeah, so that was in 2018.
2018.
But up until that point, I mean, I want people to understand this. Like, you already had the idea in 2011. You were like, dude, this sounds like a pretty good idea.
Right.
And a lot of people have ideas,
Yeah.
but they don't do anything about it. You at least tested it. That was what your testing phase looked like. And eventually, as you got more and more success with it, you realize, man, I've got something here. I need to take this serious. And I could tell you in my life, the same thing has happened with my businesses, with content. You know, I took YouTube serious last year, but before that, I mean, I knew YouTube had power. It's not like I was living under a rock.
Sure.
But I was just like, yeah, it's not really a priority for me, but I'll throw a video on Facebook. I'll throw one on Instagram, and I think content's cool. But then you realize after you get enough like traction from just the little test and the little, you know, fishing ponds, you're like, dude, I need to take this serious.
And you also see that when you throw that spaghetti at the wall,
Yeah.
you see what sticks. And you start to go, oh, people really gravitate to these types of videos.
Yep.
I'll do more of those.
Yeah.
Like for your videos, when you tour people in like those insane, like $20 million mansions,
Yeah.
I'm all in on those.
You're like, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm with you on that. And I think people just need to realize that you don't have to go full force day one.
Yeah.
You can just test the waters and see how it goes.
But I think that you do need to be consistent.
Yeah.
You can't just put out one video today and another video 3 months from now and go, well, how come nothing's happening here? You need to give people a reason to subscribe to you.
Yeah.
You need to bring value.
Yeah.
And you bring so much value with everything you do.
I
Like,
appreciate that.
You teach a lot too.
Yeah.
Like if people were to just watch your videos, and this is no disrespect to your course, but I feel like you're giving out so much value there
Yeah.
that they might not have to take your course. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's so much more that you teach them in the course, but dude, you teach a lot.
Yeah. Well, and that's the goal, right? Is like, if I can give people so much free value, then you got to think, well, what's he give when you pay for something?
Yeah.
And so it's just like, for me, I'll put as much value as I can into the world, and then I'll let the chips fall where they may.
Sure.
You know, people will buy, people will do whatever, and
Yeah.
I'm happy with it. But I will say, for like a guy like you already had success as a TV host,
Yeah.
and I don't think you're doing it anymore, right?
I'm hosting a show right now on AWE, which is the Wealth Channel,
Okay.
but I'm not doing like the day in, day out
Yeah.
celebrity red carpets, which let's be honest, there's not a lot of red carpets happening.
Yeah.
They're kind of coming back, which is exciting, but yeah, I'm not doing it in like day to day anymore.
Yeah, so you're not like fully employed by these companies anymore. You take jobs and gigs when
Yep.
you want.
Exactly.
And that's, you know, the definition of freedom.
Yeah.
You know, because you still love to interview celebrities,
Sure.
like, and all these things. And what would you say is who was your biggest celebrity that, like, what was your favorite interview?
Oh man. I grew up as such a wrestling fan
Yeah.
and wanted to be a pro wrestler. Went to wrestling school for a few months.
Yeah.
It was The Rock because of what The Rock meant to me.
Yeah.
And I would walk around my high school asking people questions just so I could shout, "It doesn't matter what you mean." You know, the Rock's catchphrase. So when I first met The Rock, it meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
And then that Tom Cruise interview was a really big one. And Oprah was a really big one. Like,
Oprah, I didn't even know you interviewed her.
yeah, so I
too.
interviewed Oprah like years ago for that movie Precious
Mm.
at the Toronto International Film Festival. And like, to look at what Oprah has accomplished, considering where she came from
Yeah.
to what she's doing now, it's unbelievable.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Can you tell me who the worst interview was?
There's been a few that like just don't go the way you think.
You're
they-
like, this is bad.
Yeah. And here's the thing. When there's cameras and you have a mic in your face or you have a mic on your lapel, usually they're in that mindset of like,
I
this
got to
is all-
perform. I
Right.
got to get my game face on. I got to do it.
I did an interview with Christoph Waltz, the bad guy from Inglourious Bastards,
Okay.
and it just wasn't good. It was for the James Bond movie Spectre,
Okay.
and he was the bad guy. So I walk into the room. We're in Mexico City. I walk into the room, and he's standing there, and he's like, "After you," and I'm like, "I don't like which one's mine here." He's like, "Oh, that one." So I asked him a question that I thought made sense. He's the bad guy in the movie, but I know that most bad guys don't ever see themselves as bad guys. No villain sees himself as a villain.
Even if they're acting and they know they're the villain.
Well, but you get into that mindset, right?
Yeah.
That the bad guy in the movie never sees himself as a bad guy.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
always justified in the decisions that they make.
Right.
And we see that with Thanos, actually, more than any other bad guy, I think.
Yep.
So I said, how do you think that your character would describe himself? I thought, like, that's pretty good. Like, maybe I was expecting him to go, well, I think that he thinks he's a pretty nice guy and he likes long walks on the beach. I thought he was going to say something like that.
Yeah.
And he goes, it is not my job to describe my character. That is your job. I'm not going to do your job for you. And I'm like, whoa. And the interview just went downhill from there. And it was only a 4-minute interview. That's how long these junket interviews, these celebrity interviews usually are.
It's just the worst 4 minutes
And at
ever.
about the 3-minute mark, I was like, well, congratulations on the film. Thank you so much. I don't really have anything else. But then I interviewed him a few years later in New Zealand, of all places. I flew to New Zealand. I interviewed him for the movie Alita Battle Angel. And in that movie, he plays like a father figure and a very kind man. The character's very kind. And I swear to you, man, it was like I interviewed a completely different person.
Yeah.
He was like so happy to see me, and everything I was saying was hilarious. And it was like, this is unbelievable.
Maybe he was still in his character.
Maybe.
He's just like, I'm not doing your, just playing the villain.
It was just so wild.
He gets really caught up in his character, man.
I mean, he is an unbelievable actor, and there's a reason he's won 2 Oscars.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was such an interesting experience.
yeah.
It was almost as if he was doing the interview as the character.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He was just still stuck.
Wow, so weird.
So what would you say as a guy who's now transitioned to, social media being the main thing versus, you were on TV? I've asked other people who have been on TV before this question of like, where's the world going? Like we have social media. Obviously TV numbers are down. Hollywood's been totally transformed with people not being able to go to theaters, and now they're streaming it on TV, which I actually went to my very first movie last week.
How would you see?
What did I see? I saw Eternals. I saw Eternals. It was
nice.
good.
Yeah, I went to the premiere for that.
Yeah, I saw Eternals, and it was in 4DX.
Oh, nice.
No.
Not nice.
No, dude. I did not know what 4DX was. I'm like, 4DX? Like, what is this? And all of a sudden, I'm on a roller coaster, and they're blowing water at me and like air. I'm like, this is nuts. My wife did not like it. So, but anyways,
Yeah, you were on a ride.
Yeah, we're on a ride for two and a half hours. But so that was my first time back at the theater in, a year and a half.
Yeah.
And I used to go to movies all the time. I love movies. And I'm just thinking, man, where's the world at? Because the theater was empty. They're streaming these movies. Hollywood's totally changed. Everything is going streaming and YouTube. Like, as a guy who's been in the industry, what do you think's happening?
And it's changed so much. So I started
quick.
I started in television in 2005, which isn't that long ago, but so much has happened since then. The advent of Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of that. I think what's happening now is the gatekeepers are gone. So no longer do you need NBC, ABC, CBS, or Fox to get a show on TV. 10 years ago, man, if you wanted to go live, you needed to own a TV station and then fill it with people who worked there, like an audio operator and a technical director and camera operators. Now, if you want to go live, you grab this supercomputer that's in your pocket, you push a button, and that's it.
Everyone can watch it.
And everybody's a creator now.
Yep.
As cliche as that sounds, everybody's a creator now. So if there's something that you're passionate about or something that you're interested in, that just means there's millions of other people out there who are also passionate about that same thing. So everybody has a voice, and your voice is no louder than my voice. It's just a matter of what do you do with that voice. So I think it's just going to keep transitioning more and more to that. Less and less people are going to have cable. Less and less people are going to be watching quote unquote traditional television. And we're going to be getting a lot of our news and a lot of our entertainment right here.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people would rather just watch what YouTubers have to say about the economy or whatever than, some news station they don't know if they can trust or not.
Dude, if I've got 20 minutes to kill, I am no longer just turning on the TV. I go to my YouTube Explore page and I go,
yeah, what's going on here?
Yeah, I'll watch that video.
Yep.
Isn't that crazy?
So many more options.
Yeah.
And you're not tied to whatever happens to be playing at that moment. To your point of, I've got these interviews that are really good, but if you don't happen to be watching.
And there's something relatable about creators. Like, I will probably never meet Mr. Beast. Who knows? Maybe our paths will cross.
I think you'll interview him, dude. I'm putting it out there.
I think I could. Sure.
Yeah.
I feel like he's like he could be our buddy.
Yeah.
Whereas when someone's on TV they just feel like they're not as
Unattainable.
accessible.
They're like mythical.
Like I've been at events with Ryan Seacrest, but Ryan Seacrest and Mr. Beast feel like they're on two very different levels.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is Mr. Beast has far more power at this point.
Right now?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, like the Mr. Beasts of the world, the Logan and Jake Pauls of the world, like there's a lot of power there.
Yeah, dude. With the amount of views they can get, the amount of influence they wield, it's like if Ryan Seacrest endorses something versus those guys are getting way more sales.
Yeah. And you as well. Like, dude, we were sitting in the studio at the Wynn getting ready to do our interview. And there was a group of guys outside who were huge Ryan Pineda fans. They loved your videos.
Crazy.
Isn't that awesome?
Just videos.
Yeah.
Right? Like anybody can go make a video and somebody can see it and be like, dude, I like that guy.
Yeah.
Like it's that easy. I don't need to go audition for Hollywood anymore or hope to land the, $8 an hour job and move up the ranks like you did. Like the world is so different today.
Yeah. And that's why I just keep coming back to you just have to start.
Yeah.
I did a podcast episode about 2 months ago and I called it, What the F Are You Waiting For? And it's true. Like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah.
Like the clouds are not going to open up and God himself is not going to go, you need to start now.
You are going to be a huge creator.
You just need to start.
Yeah.
And you need to start with 1 subscriber like everybody does.
Yep.
And then double that to 2.
Yep.
And then double that again to 4. Then
It
to
gets
8,
easier
then
as
to
you go
16.
on. It gets
Absolutely.
easier. It's just that initial phase that's so difficult. So I guess I would just say, we know that the world's transitioning that way. What do you think is going to happen to Hollywood with all of this?
I think that we're starting to see people that made it on TikTok or made it on YouTube that are now transitioning into Hollywood.
Yeah, I saw like Addison Rae got a movie on Netflix.
Right. So I think that we're going to start to see more of that.
Yeah.
And I think that so remember 20 years ago when if you were on a dating app, you were weird. Like there was
That's normal now.
there was something wrong with you. Like, oh, you can't find someone in the real world. And now if you're single and you're not on a dating app, now you're the weird one.
Yeah.
I think the way that we perceive creators right now of like, oh, they're just a TikToker. Oh, they're just a YouTuber. That's going to shift.
Yeah.
And I think that right now the perception is like, I always say this, the best thing about podcasting is anyone can have a podcast. And the worst thing about podcasting is anyone can have a podcast. You got to find a way to make yourself stand out.
Yeah.
If you said to me, oh, I'm on a TV show, you can watch it tonight on NBC at 8 o'clock, I'd go, oh, cool. If I sat next to you on a plane and said, I have a YouTube channel, the response might be something along the lines of like, oh, my nephew has a YouTube channel. That I think is going to start to shift.
Yeah.
That idea of like anyone can be a creator is going to start to be something that empowers people.
But do you think that maybe not The Rock, but your regular actors and actresses, do you think that they're going to start seeing a decline in how much they get paid, the roles? Like, can Hollywood afford to keep making movies at the level they're making them with, the movie theater not getting what it used to get?
I would think it's actually going to transition the other way because look at what The Rock's doing. The Rock is not just selling his skills as an actor in a movie. He's now producing the film. He's also working into his deal like, I will tweet about it this many times.
Right.
I'll make this many Instagram videos about it. So I think it's going to start to shift that way. They're going to go, okay, Ryan Reynolds, you're a great actor. You're perfect for this role. And also,
You have a big influence.
yes, can you promote this film 6 times in the next 4 weeks while we're promoting the film?
Right. And that makes sense because it's not about who's the best actor or actress.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you fit the role, but we also need somebody that can help us sell it.
And I don't, that's not to say that the Daniel Day-Lewises of the world who, don't have any social media are going to go away. I still think that there's room for that. But I think that in that level of The Rock or Ryan Reynolds, those types of people, I think that that's going to start to be something that's worked into every contract.
Do you think that movies will only be released? Well, not only, but like, do you ever see the theaters going away?
I can't because it's still the number one date spot. It's still the number one date spot to take someone to the movies.
Yeah.
First date or even, to take your long-term girlfriend or wife. There's also nothing better than seeing a film in theaters.
Yeah.
And filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino or Christopher Nolan are never going to let that happen. Their films are never going to go direct to video. So I think as long as you have people like that who are still shooting on film and asking you to see it in theaters, that it's never going to go away.
Yeah, that was something I was just wondering as COVID played out and as, I returned to the theater. I'm like, man, is this ever going to come back the way it was?
Yeah.
Because it's just such a powerhouse. And I've gotten really comfy just watching them at home when they go direct to HBO Max or whatever. So
I think it's going to be different, though. Like, I think the theater going experience, especially for a big movie like Avengers or something, that's always going to be there.
People want it and they don't want to wait.
Putting the costumes on, lining up for the first screening, that's still going to be a thing, I think.
Yeah.
But it's definitely going to be different from like how it was 10 or 20 years ago. But I don't think they're going anywhere.
Okay. That's good to know, dude. Well, man, I've had a blast on this interview.
Dude, thank you so
much. This has been one of
much.
my favorite ones, man. So much insight. And guys,
see what you did there.
So much insight. I didn't even mean to. But speaking of that, guys, if you want to listen to Chris's podcast, Insight, we'll link to it down below. I actually did an episode on there that you guys can go check out as well. And make sure you subscribe to his YouTube channel. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much.
All right. See you guys. Peace. Thanks for watching The Ryan Pineda Show. If you want to work with me, head over to ryanpineda.com. You can find my courses, coaching programs, and upcoming events. We also have free resources you can download, so head over to ryanpineda.com.